Good morning, campers. It's Susie Q96 with It Was the News, featuring our chief reporter, Susie Smart. And if you don't know who Susie Smart was, well, she was a learning toy back in the late 50s, early 60s when they didn't teach girls much because they thought we were supposed to be in the kitchen baking cookies with Mama. But Susie Smart wasn't that kind of toy. So if you don't know who Susie Smart is, go find out. She was the toy I always wanted to own and kind of a role model for what I wanted to be. So, decades later, she's kind of in charge of the It Was the News program. And what I do here on It Was the News is I bring you news reports about metal detecting, about coin collecting, counterfeiting, all kinds of money things from the past, back when reporters were not talking heads on the TV, but were actually went and did their homework. And the basics of being a reporter back then was you had to answer a certain number of questions in your articles, and those questions were who, what, where, when, how, and why. So the next time you watch a news report on something, just take a look and see, is the person giving you the report actually answering the questions? Who, what, where, when, how, and why? Because if you're not getting the answers to those, that's not a reporter. That's a talking head. So, I know I'm on very early this morning. Well, my good grief. It's Handy Andy 73.6. He must not have been to bed yet, because it's way too early for Handy Andy 73.6. Oh my goodness. I expected the first one to pop in to be James Eller or Scratch and Go Crazy. I certainly did not expect it to be Handy Andy. But welcome. Good morning, Mr. Andy. I saw you were on last night, but I was too sedated to... I've been in the hospital and had a lot of tests done, and the tests were not the issue. The issue was the anesthesia. I had a bad reaction to the anesthesia this time, and it took me a couple days to come out of that. So I'm doing my show this morning. I will probably do one this evening. I don't know. Still not feeling the best. I love you too, Andy. Just wasn't very happy with the wheels of the bus the other night. Doesn't mean I don't love you. You're still my brother. So I got another. I'm babbling a little bit, waiting to see if anybody comes in. I got another copyright notice from YouTube, once again, for using a song that I have permission to use. And every time I use it, I end up having to fight with them over it. So the other day I used a little clip created by my friend Charlie Schmidt, who some of you may be familiar with a character he created called Keyboard Cat. And there's a whole series of Keyboard Cat videos. In fact, there are multiple Keyboard Cats because over the years, different ones have come and gone. He always rescues pound cats for his projects, but a few years back, he did one with Keyboard Cat playing 96 Tears. Well, those of you who are familiar with my channel know that I work for the band who wrote and recorded 96 Tears, question mark and the Mysterians. I have permission to use their entire catalog. Oh, Andy, I've gotten probably 10 of them. I have beaten every single one. The bulk of the time, if you simply protest it, it will go away. But it just cracks me up. It's like, people quit using a bot. You know, how many times you going to bust me on 96 Tears when you already know I'm the publicist for that band. I have permission to use their material. So what happens is I have to go in and I fill out my little dispute, which says, you know, I work for the band, so-and-so who wrote the song has granted me permission to use the song. You need to contact him. You need to quit doing this monkey business. And so I got another one this morning. The one I got on my birthday party on March 3rd for using my friend's band out of St. Louis, Mama's Pride. I played a song on there of theirs called Can I Call You a Cab, which I dedicated to my soon-to-be ex-husband. And I had gotten one on that, which I knew was, you know, that was a joke. And so I checked today, and that one is gone. So the main thing when you get them is don't ignore them. Just go in the dispute thing and write up whatever your reasoning is, and 99.9% of the time they will disappear. I have had, I think since I have my channel, I've had about 7 or 8 of them, most of them related to question mark and the Mysterians, and every one of them I have beaten. So the birthday party, when I played about 6 different songs by 6 different artists, and the only one that went after me was my friend's band, and it wasn't him. It was just something in the algorithm. Morning, Lucky James Eller. I'm making my list. I got everybody entered so far, except for whoever gets in the contest in the next day and a half. Actually, James, you and Charles are tied for the most entries in the contest. I don't know if I still have this pulled up here or not, but I will check and see. One thing I like, I did it in Excel so that I could sort how many entries each person has and when they got them, because it's very interesting to see the number of people that came every day. Oh, come on. Why are you not opening? Please tell me I did not accidentally erase this. Oh, okay. No, I just got to scroll up. Okay. Okay. So far, not counting today, we have 105 entries. But a lot of them are the same people. And this tells me who actually comes and pays attention to my channel, because the only way to get an entry is to show up, and those who didn't show up can't get in. So let me see. Charles has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right now. And you, Lucky James, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you got 1 right now, so that's 9. So you two guys have the most entries. There are many people who just have 1 or 2, and there are some that have 5 or 6, like Scratch and Go Crazy, and then there were a couple that were given away. People gave their entries to others. There's Swing for the win. I can't even talk this morning. Morning, Swing. How's the weather up there in my mitten? I am coming back. I am coming back to the mitten. I miss Michigan terribly. When I moved here, I really wanted to be moving to Michigan, but my family kind of persuaded me to come to Virginia. I'm not a mountain girl. I mean, it's pretty, but it's not Michigan, and I cannot wait to get back. And when I get back, we're going detecting, buddy. I got a whole bunch of Michigan detecting friends now. And then I still have my Michigan rock and roll friends, so yeah, I know. I'm real excited. I wish I was going to be there for going out and picking some goods. One of my friends has an 80-acre farm, and the mushrooms grow well out there. And so I know he's going to be out there soon picking. And I wish I was going to be there. As it looks now, it probably will not be until October before I get there. And that is all depending upon a number of things, including this ridiculous divorce that I'm going through. And most importantly, being able to find affordable housing. I am sending out many letters trying to get into subsidized senior housing. I talked to one of my old counselors, and he gave me some suggestions. And I'm going to call my old church and talk to Father Frank. I'm not Catholic, but I go to a very loosely knit Catholic church when I live up there, just because I'm just in love with the congregation. I'm in love with the Father Frank there. He is awesome. He's a rock and roll fan. Every year we have a festival there to raise money for the church, and it's a rocker. You know, we have Question Mark and the Mysterians and other bands like that. It's in an old part of Saginaw where Stevie Wonder grew up in that neighborhood. The guys from Question Mark and Mysterians grew up in that neighborhood. A couple of guys from the Ink Spots came out of that area. Actually, I'm going to tell you, Swing, back in 2014 and 15, I lived in an RV when I first moved to Michigan. I lived in an RV. My problem right now is I can't afford an RV. But what I am looking at doing is, I don't know if you have seen the videos where you take a small van like a Toyota Sierra or a Nissan, and you turn them into mini motorhomes. I actually have got about half of the stuff I need already to do that, but because of my health issues, I really do have to have a real place to live. But no, I lived, when my first year and a half in Michigan, I lived on my friend's farm in my RV. I had at that time a 26-foot Class C, and I really liked it. And but yeah, because of my health issues, I have to have a little more settled place. So, but I thoroughly intend on having some type of motorhome for the very purpose of being able to go detecting when I want to, and if I don't feel good, then I can just go get in there and take a nap, whatever. I wish I had the money to buy my brother's motorhome. My brother is selling his because he's getting too old to deal with it, but it has been immaculately cared for, and it's not huge. It's not much bigger than a van, but it's got everything in it. It's called a road trek, and when he bought it, it was like 80 grand. It wasn't not a cheap little thing. It's top of the line stuff, and he has taken very good care of it. And if I had $20,000, I could buy it from him. But I don't happen to have $20,000 lying around. But if I did, that would be the motorhome of my choice. It's just an awesome, awesome motorhome. And it is for sale, or will be probably at the end of this summer. Yeah, road treks are top of the line, but they are worth it. My brother has had his for many years and had really almost no problems with it. I mean, his biggest problem, I think, was something of his own creation. And it was simply because he got sick and they didn't move it around enough. But all in all, he has not spent anything more than your average normal maintenance, tires, brakes. They did. Yeah, see, I'm not young. That's the problem. I'm not young. I'm 68 years old. So what my brother has would be the perfect. And I have joked with him, because we joke around a lot about how old we're getting, and both of us have similar health issues, and I tease him once in a while and say, hey, you put me down in the will yet for that road trek? And he just laughs. But because I know he can't afford to just give it to me, he's going to have to sell it at some point. But I think they're planning maybe one more adventure this year, and then after that it will probably be sold. Yeah, see, I do not like pull behinds, and I don't know why I have an aversion to a pull behind, because I towed race cars for years. So I don't know why. I just don't want to deal with tow behinds anymore. But I really liked my Class C. The only thing I didn't like was if I wanted to go somewhere, I had to take the whole darn thing with me. So, I bought a bicycle, but I was really too old to ride it. I should have bought a little scooter. That's what my brother did. He's got a little scooter that goes on the back of his road trek, and so he can just unload his scooter and ride. He and his wife used to travel a lot more. Toyota Dolphin. Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. But yeah, I would love to have another motorhome, but I am gonna have to have a permanent residence simply because I have way too many health issues. So I'm searching. There are certain areas of Michigan that I am searching, and some people go, "Ew, I wouldn't want to live there," but it's where my support system is. It's where my friends are. So yeah, there are a lot of people who would not like to live near Saginaw. There are a lot of people that wouldn't like to live near Flint. Uh, there are people that wouldn't really like living near Bay City. But those are where my support systems are. I used to live in Flushing till my house flooded. But I liked that area. I would actually like to have a tiny house on that 80-acre farm. The problem is Genesee County has an ordinance now about tiny houses, and there's already one tiny house on that farm that belongs to the owner's brother. So they are maxed out on the tiny house portion. However, I can still go there and park my motorhome, but I won't be ready to be making that trip. You know, the mushrooms it would be next year's mushrooms, not this year's, before I could get there to do that. Right now, I'm having major money issues, and so, but I have no plan on signing another lease here if I can absolutely avoid it. I don't like it at all. The people are nasty. And there's so many things about Michigan that I do like. And if I want to go visit my relatives in the Midwest, I can usually hit most of them in a one-day drive. So that's another benefit. All right. Somebody left me. I don't know who. Probably Andy, because I think he was up all night. He was sorting quarters, or no, not quarters. Penny, I don't know. I was asleep. I saw he was on, and that was about it. So I'm going to turn my Nightbot on because if anybody comes in this early in the morning, we're going to play some cats and dogs and sign up a few more people. Yeah, Genesee County is so corrupt. It truly is so corrupt. And of course, the proof of that is what happened with the water system there. But you know, many of my doctors are there, you know, that I could go back to right now that have kept me alive. And I lived in Genesee County. If I had lived on the other side of M13, I would not have lived in Genesee County. I was kind of right on the border. Actually, I lived pretty close to, I don't know if you're familiar with a YouTuber named Fleabag, but I lived pretty close to Fleabag. But I think I'm either going to end up in the Bay City area or Saginaw, simply because there are more available low-cost housing for disabled seniors in those areas. And I do have friends that live there. I used to have, as a matter of fact, there's a place in Bay City called the Bay City Indoor Flea Market. And I had a booth in there. I used to drive from Flushing to Bay City 3 days a week to check out my market, get a houseboat for the next flood. Yeah, no kidding. Uh, Sometimes I would be driving up. I would have to check before I could drive up to Bay City, just to make sure that M13 wasn't underwater. Find a different way to go, take the interstate or whatever, because I liked the drive up M13. It was just, I liked the scenic route, but sometimes I would get up there and there would just be barricades and I'd have to turn around and go back around. There wasn't anything you could do about it. And then my other option is to move a little bit south, more towards Ann Arbor. I do have some friends down there as well, but I'd really like to be up where I can do my work with the band easier, and the band people are all scattered from Clio, Mount Morris, Saginaw, and Bay City. So I kind of need to stay in that loop as much as I can, because I also had some really, really good doctors there. And I'd like to be able to have them again, because they were very, very good for the most part. Saved my life. I used to do a lot of the farmers markets there. I was a regular at the farmers market in Montrose and a couple of the other ones around the area. But boy, I did get tired of dodging the Tittabawassee River floods on M13. I just get up there all of a sudden, they were, whoops, can't go that way. Turn yourself around, go back around the other way. Yeah, what was the other one? Oh, I can't think of the name of it, and I don't know why. It's where the showboat was. And I used to do that farmer's market every Saturday. And but yeah, I really liked that area. Like I said, I lived in Flushing Township. I didn't live right in Flushing. So, but yeah, I am not into this mountain thing. I'm not. I grew up in Florida with beaches and water, and I don't mean like rivers. I mean, yeah, we have rivers, but I'm like more tuned into the Great Lakes kind of thing. Like being able to just jump in my car and run up to the Bay City recreation area, or drive over to Lake Michigan or something. I'm much more comfortable with that than I am here. This is just not my place. And yes, there is a music scene here, but it's not my music scene. This is like bluegrass and traditional music, which I play and I like it, but that's not my scene. My scene is like 60s rock and blues and soul music, and so I am like really, really more suited to be a Michigander than I am whatever the heck they call people that live here. I call it hillbilly hell, but probably does not endear me to my neighbors too much. Okay, let me see. What's going on with the Nightbot? Well, the Nightbot says there's 2 whole people here, so I can't really play a game with 2 people. So I'll just put you down on the list. And well, actually, it says there's 3 people here, but somebody hasn't posted, so the Nightbot's only picking up 2. I do have some funny little stories this morning for It Was the News. And some of these are pretty old. So if you think... some funny little stories this morning. I got to shut up the sound on YouTube. She likes to yap. So I'm going to try to pull the newspaper app up here, because I found, I mean, some of these are from the 1800s and they're pretty good. I wouldn't have thought of some of these, and they're interesting for sure. I'm still working on my military one. That one's going to take a while, because I'm just finding so many things that I can't believe, yet I know they're real. But I just got to go back and like follow up on some of the names in the articles and get, the history of them. And so that's going to be a whole special show right there. But some of the stuff that I found in the last couple of days is pretty interesting. Like, and some of them are pretty short too, so they can be entertaining without taking your whole day. I got one from the Gettysburg Compiler that, okay, let me make sure I'm on the right. Got everybody up on the screen like I want them, because I always try to show the articles so that I'm not just making this mess up. Some of this stuff, you just couldn't even make it up. It's so crazy. Okay. Now, this is one from the Gettysburg Compiler from, oh my goodness, April 18th, 1837. And it says, counterfeit coin. Counterfeit Mexican dollars, American half and quarter dollars, and 10 and 5 cent pieces, well executed, are in circulation. Be on your guard, you who love a species currency. So 1837 in Gettysburg, you had all this counterfeit coins floating around. You had Mexican dollars, you had American half dollars, American quarters, American dimes, and nickels. And this is 1837. So if you're a coin collector and you have coins from 1837, you might want to take a second look at them and find out, are they even real? Because apparently these coins, according to the article, were very well executed and people couldn't tell them from the real deal. So that's one of the reasons I do this, because people don't necessarily realize that this 1837 dime that they bought in Joe Blow's auction could be fake. And the guy selling it probably has no idea it could be fake either, because he wasn't around in 1837. But it's amazing to me that these people were, even back then, had figured out how to make a buck by making a buck. So let me see, there was another one I found that was pretty good too, and it was older than that one. Let's see if I can or about the same time period, not necessarily older. Okay, here's one from 1839. Get that up here in the stream, but the article is from 1839, but it is referring to 1834. This one came out of Ohio, and it says counterfeit coin. Counterfeit half-dollar pieces bearing the stamp of the United States dated 1834 and which are said to be very well executed are in circulation. They are much lighter than the genuine coin and may be easily detected by an inspection of the edges, which after being slightly rubbed shows the material to be brass or copper. Now these are 1834 half dollars. Again, somebody made them good enough. They made them good enough that they were getting passed without question until somebody figured out, rub on the edge of them and you can see it's not what it is supposed to be. But are those still floating around? How could you possibly catch every one of them? I mean, there have to be some of them still out there and could well be sitting in somebody's collection somewhere. This one, I think these kids would have probably had the biggest day of their entire life. This one is from the New York Times. This is a doozy here. This is from 1856. A large amount of counterfeit money found. Some boys, while at play yesterday afternoon in the mahogany yard of Mr. Smith and Dalton at the corner of Vestry and Washington Streets, discovered secreted a leather traveling bag, which, on being opened, was found to contain $1,024 in counterfeit species, coin dies, a vial of nitrate of and I'm not sure what that abbreviation is. I'm thinking nitrate of silver is what it says. And 3 books explaining the mode of coin counterfeiting in all its parts. Now, bear in mind, folks, this is 1856. $1,024 in 1856? You're a bunch of little kids and you're out playing and you find a bag with that in it? I'm not sure I'd have wanted to run home and told Mama. But these kids did. It says the coin, $919 of which was in $1, $2.50, and $5 gold pieces, and the balance in silver quarters were evidently of recent manufacture. A part of it was yet in a partial rough state, but much of it, including all of the silver, was so neatly executed as to be almost mistaken for genuine. Now here's the part that here's the real history part here. They even tell you the books. The books found are entitled The Mechanic's Own Book, Gunner's Electrometallurgy, and Valuable Secrets. The last named is dated 1795 on the imprint and is somewhat the worse of usage. All the property found was placed in charge of the Fifth Ward police, who are on the alert to find the owner. So these kids found a book written in 1795 telling people how to counterfeit coins. And you got to wonder, okay, they found this bag. It's got $1,000 worth of counterfeit coins and silver in it. How many more? $1, $5, $2.50, quarters. How many more are out there? Surely the Fifth Ward police didn't get them all. That's some pretty crazy stuff. That is some seriously crazy counterfeiting info right there. And the fact that they actually named the books in the article, I wonder if those books even exist. And if some crazy counterfeiter down in Waco, Texas or somewhere has got his little book open to that 1795 secrets and going, hey, I'm going to make me some Mexican coins. And, you know, there's a lot of information in these articles that people have no clue about. I have friends who are coin collectors, and they think they know everything about everything, and I guarantee you they don't know most of the stuff that I'm covering on this show. And unless they come and watch it, they never will. But that's okay. I'm preserving the information, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I had somebody the other day that wanted to argue with me about the Indian on the Indian head penny. Not an Indian at all. And if you go back and you watch the story, you'll find out that is not an Indian on that coin. You can call it an Indian head all you want, but it's just a lady, a white lady with a headdress on. It's not an Indian. Oh my goodness. But I enjoy reading some of the history articles. I've learned a lot about coins from looking at these articles. I've also learned a lot about metal detecting. I kind of had a challenge thrown at me the other day when I said I was doing this show by Florida Thunder Digging with Rob, who commented that I wouldn't have any problem finding the information about coin collecting, but that I probably wouldn't find anything about metal detecting, and how wrong he has been. But he has not been over to watch the shows yet, so at some point I will start sending these articles to him. Here's one from 1936, kind of interesting. This is a metal detecting article. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, it is true. She was not an Indian. She was actually the wife of the friend of one of the artists, and also the person on the Mercury dime is definitely not Mercury, and that was somebody else's wife. It's interesting to discover those things. I'm just going to put Texas Joe down on the list. I'm not drawing cards this morning because we don't have enough people to draw cards. Oh, Pro Metal's here. Good morning, Pro Metal. Did you go watch that video that you asked about the link for? If you did, then you have a better understanding of what that conversation was about last night. Okay, let me get this one up here. This is kind of a neat article. Ran across this one this morning. I have these subscriptions to these newspaper things because I do people's family histories, and I have to look up obituaries and weddings and that sort of thing. And so I And I also do research for rock bands and actors and people who are doing their memoirs and biographies, and sometimes they need their memories refreshed on where something happened. And so I have access to all these newspaper articles, and one day there happened to be one on the same page with an article I needed. Yeah, I thought you would find it pretty bizarre, Pro Metal. That incident is why so many people do not like that person anymore. Because I was on his side and he turned on me that way. And the things that he sent were just so bizarre. I happened to be online that night, and I sent that last one I sent over to Simon from the Weedy Boys, and he lasted about 1 minute through it and said, "Holy, what is wrong with this guy?" So that's kind of why all of that. Like I said, I sat on releasing that one video for 3 months. I was really bothered by it because he was my friend. But I couldn't condone that. That was just too crazy. Even for me, that was crazy. All right, so let's get this article up here and see what this guy was up to with metal detecting back in Texas in 1936. Hi, Stan. Let me get Stan on the list before I forget. Yeah, I'm not drawing cards this morning. I'm just kind of muddling through, and then when the weather gets a little bit warmer, I think I'm going to go outside for a while. I don't know if I'm going to detect or not, but I need to go get fresh air. Okay, so we're going to read you this article. I think I got it up on the screen now. Called Sikhs Permit to Hunt Gold Under Highway. Now, I'm going to have to follow up on this one and see if he ever found the gold. But this is from El Paso, Texas, September 19th, 1936. And it is titled Sikhs Permit to Hunt Gold Under Highway. T.W. Tuller, 4131 La Luz Street, former El Paso saloon keeper, today waited for permission from J.G. Lott, district highway engineer, to start digging for $20,000 in Mexican gold. He said the money is buried beneath the Upper Valley Highway. Mr. Lott was to return to El Paso late today. Mr. Tuller says he located the treasure with a metal finding machine. The money was buried in the Upper Valley by a henchman of Pancho Villa, Mr. Tuller said. He was killed while crossing the Rio Grande. Relatives of the soldier assertedly lived near Fabens for many years, but never sought the money. The money is somewhere between the city limits and White Spur, Mr. Tuller said. It is about 6 feet from the edge of the present paved road near the center of the highway. No one will ever find it without my machine. So this is yet another guy who was messing around with creating metal detecting devices and swore that he knew where this $20,000 was. So I have not had an opportunity yet to go back and research and find out if Mr. T.W. Tuller was ever granted the permission to go dig up the highway, or if he ever actually found the $20,000 that he claims was buried there. But I would sure like to find more information about that machine that he says he created. So I just think that that's an interesting one to follow up on, and I will see. Yeah, I bet the county did get out there. They probably told him, no, Mr. Tuller, we're not letting you go out there and dig up our road. And then probably in the wee hours of the night, took some railroad lanterns and stuff and went out there and commenced digging some holes. That's what I think is going to be the end response. But I am going to follow up on some later newspapers and see if he got his permit and if he found anything. But yeah, Texas Joe, you're down there. Get on down there. I just gave you the info. You know where it is. So, but that's why I like reading these articles, because you don't know. Maybe it's still there. It's almost like a written treasure map or a written instruction manual, like the one that listed the names of the books for making the counterfeit coins. Do those counterfeit coins still exist? Was there really money buried under the Upper Valley Highway? These were what they believed back in this time period. And unless somebody like me comes along and follows up on what happened with that. Here's one more we're going to do about Granddaddy Moore and his metal detecting. And this is 1938, only a couple of years after that one. So we will see what he was up to. There's Mr. Mark Thomas this morning. Morning. You guys can tell I am feeling considerably better than I was. Yeah, he's looking up Fabens on the map right now. I bet you are. Of course, we don't know that highway even exists. You would have to probably go back to a 1936 map and find where that actually was in 1936. Yeah, Mexican 20K in Mexican gold. I'd be down for that. Okay, this one is from Jackson, Mississippi, or Clarksdale, Mississippi, but from the Jackson newspaper. So we're going to Jackson this morning. 1938. Special detector used in discovery of buried metal. May 24th, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Walter Wilson, M.E. Moore, and W.D. Pruitt, residents of Monroe County, have invented a radio metal detector and within a short time will attempt to locate a cannon that was believed to have been dumped into the Tombigbee River near Cotton Gin Port more than 200 years ago. Now, this article is from 1938. So, 1838, 1738, they're saying this cannon was dumped in this river in 1738. So, we're talking way before the Revolution. The hunt for the cannon will be only illustrations that have been made by one of the large number of demon. Yeah, see, I think some of the articles messed up a little bit, because I think it should have been, will only be demonstrations made by one of the large number of the radio detector inventors to prove the value of the new invention. Now, I have done 8, 9, 10 different articles about 10 different people that all claim to have been the ones to invent these machines. So this is just another group. Everybody kind of got on the bandwagon. The inventions have for a year or more been conducting The inventors have for a year or more been detecting various demonstrations, including searches for hidden treasure. Moore said some time ago located $4,000 in hidden money near Water Valley in Yalobusha County. He also made various discoveries in Grenada County, and the inventors have several times been summoned to locate sunken motorboats in various lakes of North Mississippi and the Delta. They have in their possession a large number of old coins that they have located through their invention. So this is 1938. But I thought it was interesting. They were going to go look for a cannon, a 200-year-old cannon, with this device. So to my friend Florida Thunder Digging with Rob, sorry, buddy, I'm finding all kinds of interesting stories about early metal detecting and all the different claims by different folks who believe that they created the device. Really, I think what happened is everybody took the device and tried to tweak the idea to make it something metal. I mean, something better. Most people credit Alexander Graham Bell, but I'm not sure I buy into that one. I mean, because he tried to create something that would find a metal object in a person's body, but he failed at it because he didn't stop and think that the bed in which the person was lying had metal springs in it. So I don't know that I can really give him credit. But I've got a large list now of people who claim to have been the inventors of the metal detector. And while actually I don't think any of them specifically was the singular inventor, I think a lot of these people have had an influence on the way the detector developed and became a hobbyist, a treasure hunter thing. But there is no doubt that I am finding articles about it. I just read you 2 or 3 of them. So when Mr. Rob comes on later, y'all can tell him he was wrong. I may or may not be on his show this morning. I'm watching the weather. The weather looks beautiful. And my doctor actually said I need to go out and breathe in some fresh air because I'm still trying to get all of that anesthesia out of my system. What I have done this morning, instead of playing cats and dogs, I just wrote everybody's name down. So today's list of people who have been in so far to see me, I don't think I've missed anybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on here. There's 6 of them here now. But the people that have been here so far are Charles, Mark Thomas, Stan CT, Pro Metal Detecting, Texas Joe, Swing for the Ring, Lucky James Eller, and Handy Andy 736. I brought a note from your mom for your tardiness. I almost went into shock that Handy Andy came in because I know he was up all night streaming, so I just don't think he has gone to bed yet. He may have now. He just came in and let me know he was here and said, love you, and that was it, you know. That's my brother, in case y'all don't know. Sometimes we don't always get along, but that's my brother, and I love him, and so I was glad to see him pop in here this morning. He was first one in. He even beat James Eller in this morning. So, yeah, I got up early because my GAWw thing, the First Lady of Metal Detecting. I don't think I've earned that title quite yet, but I enjoy the hobby. I was introduced to it by my father. My dad, uh, my dad really couldn't hold a job, and it wasn't his fault. Um, really, and at the time I didn't understand, but my father suffered from what back then they called manic depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, which in that time period they called shell shock. He never was quite right after he came back from World War II, and so he was a handyman, and he did the best he could to feed his family. And one of the things, my dad was an avid fisherman. Well, one day he's out in his boat, and he sees these guys not too far away from him. They had a little trolling motor on the back of their little aluminum fishing boat, and their motor fell off and went down into the lake. And so he ended up going over and pulling them back to shore. Well, then my dad got this idea. Now, we're talking the 1960s. And I want you to keep that in your head because of things that are popular hobbies now. So he gets the guys back to shore, and they get their little boat on their trailer, and they leave. And my dad is thinking, there's a motor out there that these guys just lost. I wonder if I can figure out how to get it out. So he was trying to fish it out with his anchor, and that didn't work. So a couple days later, my dad sees this old TV sitting on the side of the road. Now, back in the days, TVs had one great big speaker in it, and that speaker had a great big magnet on the back of it. So my dad gets this TV and brings it home, and he takes this magnet out of the speaker, and he's got it on a chain with padlock, because they didn't really have carabiners, and that kind of stuff wasn't really the big thing back in the 60s. So he takes this magnet back out to the lake with him the next day, and sure enough, he fished that motor out. Now, my dad could fix a boat motor. There was no question. My dad was very mechanically inclined. He could fix a motor. So he ends up getting their motor out, and a couple of other ones as well, and some fishing poles, and of course now this is a popular hobby now, magnet fishing. But I had never even dreamed of that idea back in the 60s. So anyway, he gets these motors out, and he takes them home, and he fixes them up and gets them all running. We had a barrel in the backyard. He'd run the motors in, make sure everything was working. And a guy he met down at the lake one day was talking to him. He said, Gene, I need to get another motor. My motor's crap. He said, would you trade me for it? My dad said, no, your motor's crap. I'm not going to trade, a perfectly running good Johnson motor for a piece of junk. So the guy says, well, how about if I give you the motor and this newfangled thing that my son bought me for Christmas, which was a metal detector from Sears, which turned out actually later on, I wish I had known this, I'd have kept it. It was made by White. So it was a pretty good metal detector for its day. So my dad said, oh, okay, we'll take that. I'll take that trade. So he trades the guy the motor for the broken motor and the metal detector. The very first thing my dad found down at the lake with the metal detector up by the boat launch was a 1950-something 14-karat gold class ring Of course, back then there was no internet. We tried writing to the school. We tried figuring out who this ring belonged to and never did. So my crazy dad uh, took a file and he filed off the school name and everything, and he sanded it all down so that it was like just a ring with a nice stone in it. And I think he sold the little gold flakes, but he was buried wearing that ring. Many years later, he wore that ring the rest of his life. That was the first thing he ever found with a metal detector, and it was my first experience with a metal detector. Now, of course, I didn't have that kind of luck, but I was like 14 or so, and I thought I mean, I was happy if I went down there and found quarters and pennies, and I would find pocket knives and fishing lures, and all the fishing stuff I just gave to Dad. I got to keep the change because I didn't really like to go out in the boat that much. So my dad would go out fishing. I'd stay up on the shore up there and metal detect. And then eventually, my dad needed another boat. His boat got damaged, and so he ended up trading a couple of things, including the metal detector. So I never had one again until just a few years ago, and it was something I always wanted to do. I just never got back to it. So about 3-4 years ago, my friend Tommy and I started talking about metal detecting because he worked at a stock car track and a motocross track, and so people were always dropping stuff out there. So we had planned to do this together, but then Tommy had a stroke and passed away, and I kept on doing it. My father was in the Pacific. My dad was in the Solomon Islands. He was in Bougainville, Guadalcanal. He was actually he received the Bronze Star. And I have a letter that says it's a letter from his commanding officer's wife that they had put him in for the Congressional Medal of Honor, but unfortunately, his commanding officer had been killed before all the paperwork got through, or my dad probably would have gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor. I have all the documentation. I have statements from people who were in his unit. I have a letter from his commanding officer's wife where she says that her husband described my father as, and I'm going to quote you, the fightingest man in the U.S. Army. So some of the things, my dad would tell us stories and we thought he was lying because the story was so crazy that you're just like, come on, Dad, that didn't really happen. And then years after my dad passed away, I found out that everything he had told me was true. So I'm going to do a whole story someday on that story about my dad. But yeah, he was in the Pacific. He was a staff sergeant. So he would get quite PO'd if you called him sir, because he was not an officer. But unfortunately, the war had a very bad effect on my dad, and I later found out that in my family history, whether he had gone through the war or not, the manic depression, bipolar thing goes back at least as far as my great grandfather. I have some real interesting stories about him too. Those things are going to go on my other channel. Yeah, Guadalcanal, Bougainville, Solomon's. Yeah, it was very, very bad. And it's a miracle that my dad came out of there alive. So I have another channel that I'm going to start doing some of my history and genealogy stuff on. Let me see if I can get the link to that, because some of those stories I'm going to show over there, because I do actually have documents from people. I have letters. I have my father's military records, which they swore to me were lost until I dragged some high politicos in, and all of a sudden things showed up. My dad never got, in his lifetime, never got his medals that he earned, and that always bothered him. The only one that he got was one of his Purple Hearts. So I fought, I'm going to say probably 5 or 6 years to get my dad's medals, which I do now have in my possession. And of the documentation, I wish that I could get a little bit more documentation to prove the part about the my brain just went blank. The part about the Medal of Honor, because like I said, when I heard the story, I thought it was like the biggest joke. I'm like, this could not possibly have happened. Nobody would have thought to do something this crazy. But then I talked to some other men who have now since passed away. But I talked to some guys that said, oh yeah, that really happened. Your dad really did that. And because he did that, he saved several people's lives. So I do want to tell his story. This is not probably the right channel to do it on. I think it belongs more on my genealogy channel. But when I do it, I will let everybody over here know. Yeah, my dad didn't talk a whole lot about what he did, but there was this one particular story. And like I said, it was so funny that we thought it was just something Dad was making up to keep from talking about what really happened. But as it turned out, it really was true. And my dad was in the Army. And a lot of people ask, a lot of people badmouth the Army. Say, oh, the Marines had to go in and bail them out and blah, blah, blah. And that really pisses me off, because they have no idea what the Army did before they got there. And because I have researched my dad, I know what he did. My dad was in Company E of the 182nd Americal Division, which was a specialized group. It was it was a specialized group of men who went in there, and they were sent in so totally ill prepared that it's a miracle any of them came out alive. So, gee, yeah, you know what? Yeah, the Marines did have to go in and finish it up, because they didn't send, they sent a bunch of Army guys in totally unprepared for what they were going to find there. So, yeah, exactly. Same team, different uniform. Thank you. They all got the tough duty. Didn't matter. But it really burned me up when I lived in Texas. I had a friend who lived in Jacinto City, where I live, and he was a Marine who had served there. And he made a remark one day about, he called the Army guys that were there ahead of the Marines, he called them slackers and losers. And I came up out of that chair, and they almost had to call the cops because I was going to kill this son of a bitch. Because I knew what my dad had been through. And I told him, I said, look, I said, I'm going to bring a book down here and I'm going to show you the people you're talking about. And you better not ever say anything like that again about the 182nd Americal Division, because I will kick your scrawny old ass to the other side of Houston. And once I showed him all of this paperwork and showed him how ill-equipped the Army was when they were first sent in there, he had a different attitude. But, you know, I love all my military guys, but sometimes there are some Marines that think that they were the only people in the war. And they weren't. Yeah, exactly. Intel back then, they knew almost nothing when they sent these poor guys in there. And the fact that my dad was able to save anybody was a miracle. Anyway, I put the link up there. That is the link to my genealogy channel, where there will be a lot of history stuff. Like I was talking the other day about my one of my great-grandfathers, who was a political prisoner during the Civil War, but not for the reasons that most people would think. It was because he was a vigilante. He was pro-South, and he was working in the Midwest and the North, basically as a spy and a vigilante. Well, at first the guy didn't really want to hear what I had to say. And I kind of forced it down his throat by bringing a vast amount of history that I had in a notebook. And it took me a long time to gather that stuff up. And I partially owe that thanks to a place in Houston, Texas, where I got my start as a genealogist. There is a library in Houston called the Clayton Library, and it is nothing but genealogy and history. At the time I lived there, there was nothing across the street, but now I believe there is a Holocaust museum across the street from it. But I found a lot of military history in there that helped me piece my dad's story together. And then I was lucky enough to find several men. This was in the early days of the internet, where there really wasn't even much HTML. The internet was mostly just text. But I was able to find several men who had served with my father, and some who had been there but not at the same time as my father. They had come after my dad had already left, but they had heard of my dad. I found one man who actually sat in the aid station with my father while they were waiting to airlift my dad out, and sat there with him, which was a pretty awesome thing, because he just kept talking to my dad so that my dad would stay conscious. And so, you know, my dad was a difficult person to grow up with. A very difficult person. Because of what he went through. I have other family members that they just say, oh, I hate him. I hate how he acted. But, and they think that he was making an excuse. Well, I also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I also I suffer from what is now called bipolar. But so maybe because those passed down to me, I have a better understanding of what he went through. Yeah, my dad was wounded multiple times, and growing up as a kid, my dad had so much shrapnel in his body that periodically pieces of it would work its way up to the skin, and they would have to go in and pull them out. My dad, by all rights, should not have lived through what he lived through, but he did. And he saved a bunch of people. That's how he got all that shrapnel. One of the things he did, he was in a what they called a food bunker, where they were storing the food for the troops and also extra ammo, but there wasn't much ammo left in there. So he's down in this hole with 3 or 4 other guys, and the enemy discovered where they were, and they started lobbing grenades in the hole, and my dad and this other guy are grabbing these grenades and throwing them back out, and they're rolling down the hill back towards the enemy. Well, they missed one of them, so some of those guys got killed, and some of them were completely covered in shrapnel. But I will give you a clue. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but my dad figured out a way to trick these guys. And how he did it was they had all of these canned food in there. So, and not that many grenades and stuff left. So they could hear these guys down at the bottom of the hill, and they're throwing the grenades up at them, and as many as they could, our guys are throwing them back down. And so my dad figured out how to trick these guys and make them retreat. And so what they would do is they'd throw a grenade, and the grenade would blow up, and the enemy would retreat. And then the next time, they'd throw a can of beans. And you had the same sound of this can rolling down the hill, so the guys would retreat, but it didn't blow up. So then the enemy is confused because they hear something coming out of this hole. They don't know if it's a can of beans or if it's a can of grenade. So my dad and these 7 other guys held these guys off for like 14 hours. And they finally got them to back off. And there's a lot more to the story, but who would believe that you tricked a bunch of Japanese by throwing beans at them? Only some crazy old farmer from Missouri would come up with that one. And that was my dad. Yep, that can of beans was a force to be reckoned with. Oh, yes, indeed it was. Let me see if I can find one more crazy story in my clippings, and then I'm going to go have some breakfast and decide if I'm going to go detecting or just go sit out in the sun, because I definitely need some fresh air. I really had a hard time coming out of the anesthesia this time. It made me very, very ill. And normally I don't have that, but today I did, or this week I did. Yesterday I was absolutely useless. Okay, here's one more that I found. This is from Oklahoma City. Let's see if we can get Oklahoma City up here. Get up there. There we go. All right. This is our last one. This one's a counterfeiting issue from 26th of June, 1935. One of the things I've noticed is in with the counterfeiting things, a lot of it was during the Great Depression or just as we were coming out of the Depression. People were desperate for money. They just were. And so, 1935, that's pretty much right smack dab in the middle of it. This one, coin counterfeiting charges denied. Alleging 3 counterfeit coins were found on Terry Dodd and 19 others in his room, along with materials for counterfeiting. Federal agents Tuesday filed counterfeiting charges against the suspect. Arraigned before George Eacock, United States Commissioner, Dodd pleaded not guilty. Bond was set at $2,500. Now think about it. This is the middle of the Depression. A $2,500 bond, that's pretty serious. In another arraignment before Eacock, John Schwartz Clinton denied a charge of selling liquor to an Indian. His bond was set at $1,000. So I guess they had an interesting day there down at George Eacock's courtroom that day. We had illegal liquor sales and we had some counterfeiting. But like I said, a lot of these things happened in the middle of the Depression. My parents grew up in the Depression, so I heard a lot of stories about it. My mom was a little girl during the Depression, and I have photographs of my mother and her sisters wearing clothes made out of flour sacks because they just didn't have any money for clothes. My sister was the third of 16 children. One of them died when he was 11 months old, so some people say the third of 15, but I'm always going to count Paul Edward. He was there. But my mother was the third oldest of a very large family. And I do have a photograph of her and 2 or 3 of her sisters wearing, and these were not even the printed flour sacks that were made to come out that sort of look like fabric. These were just flour sacks. I don't even know if these children had night clothes or underclothes or anything. They're just standing there and they got no shoes. And so I understand how something like counterfeiting or petty theft, I understand that people were forced into that just to do something as simple as feed their children. Look up the bio of Charles Bronson. Yeah, I've actually read some stuff about Charles Bronson. Now, the M1 clip trick, I am not familiar with, so I will write that down. But Charles Bronson, I have read some on. But, yeah, people, even when I was growing up, I grew up in a very poor family, and it was because my dad really couldn't hold a job. One day he was fine, the next day he was crazy as a bedbug. And unfortunately, my dad was violent. There was no treatment really back then for what they called shell shock or manic depression or any of those things. They just basically sent you home and your family had to deal with it. And my dad was not very functional. The best thing about my dad was that every day he would, even if it was raining most of the time, he would go hook up his little boat and he would go out to the lake and fish because truthfully, we needed that food. My mom worked in a grocery store. You know, we did not have money. So, and to make it worse, I went to school with the rich kids. I happened to be right on the borderline where we went to school with kids who had way, way, way more money than we did. I failed PE because I could not afford a pair of sneakers. You know, that kind of thing. Yep, PTSD. I have PTSD. I live with it every day. And, but my dad, yeah, he could get out in the lake and he was away from everybody, so it gave him some peace, and it also allowed him to feed his family. But he could not really hold a permanent job. He worked with my uncle when we first moved to Florida for a couple of years. We moved to Florida because my uncle had a floor tile business and got a contract to help build the Cape back in the 50s. And so it was just my dad and my uncle in this, you know, in these rooms putting in the flooring. So he could deal with that. But any kind of job where he had to be around a lot of people, he could not do that. So his way of feeding his family was hunting and fishing, mostly fishing. But we ate some strange stuff. Good morning, Modest Moon Gazer. Good morning, Jack Gallman. Anyway, I'm about to go here. I've been on here a lot longer than I planned on being, but I get into telling some of these history stories, and some of them are just funny, and some of them get really serious. Forest Raven, revamped channel. Okay. Let me put that down on a note because you get a free entry. You're the second one today I've had with a name change. Because they're creating content now and they wanted a different image for their content. So glad to see you, and now I know who you are, so I feel better. I had one yesterday. I still don't know who that was. But it was okay. I like having new people come in. That one came in because I put something about being psycho in my title, and it attracted some attention. Yeah, my family, I don't come from a wealthy family. I don't come from a prominent family, but I come from a family that really, if you listen to their story, it is the typical American family that we don't always hear about. That's one of the reasons that I'm starting that other channel with the genealogy thing, because I mean, some of this stuff in my morning show, it fits in with the newspaper articles. Well, there's Mike Wolf too. Now everybody's waking up. Just when I'm getting ready to go out metal detecting, everybody's waking up. But I got a whole nother list of people to put on the thing. Today I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 more entries going on the list. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm gonna metal detect or not. I'm actually thinking about going to the car wash because I need to clean my metal detecting equipment, and I don't have, there's no water hose here where I live for me to go out and hose everything off. And so I'm thinking about taking my stuff down there and cleaning it up. But then I'm also thinking about metal detecting, so I may just go detect. I'm going to set my clock on my phone so I don't overdo it. No, my dad's was no excuse. My dad's was, he spent a long time in a hospital because of what he went through. So much to the point that they actually lost track of him. And for a while, my mom had to have the Red Cross looking all over. They didn't even know where he was. They had completely lost track of him. And he was in a mental ward because he didn't know who he was. His dog tags had been blown off of him. So, no, in my dad's case, it was all too real. And he was not like that. It got progressively worse over the years. He was okay, probably, I'm going to say, until I was about 5 or 6. But because they did not really treat him, it just got worse and worse and worse. But, you know, I remember times when my dad was not like that at all. But if you give somebody, you know, if somebody has that. Now, see, my deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, I don't get violent, I get loud. I get mad, I get emotional. I will go from yelling at you to apologizing and crying. My dad could not hold it. He held it from 1945 until about 1958, 59. And then he just could not, he could not cope. And there was no VA assistance of any kind for people like that. And there were a lot of families that went through it. No, I'm not Italian. People might think I am because I talk with my hands, but to my knowledge, I have absolutely no Italian blood at all. I am primarily, on my father's side, I am English, 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 and English. And on my mother's side, I am German and Dutch, mostly German. Yeah, everything was just bubbling up in my dad, and there was a point at which, without any kind of help or anything, that he just lost it, and he became a very, very difficult person to be around. He was violent. He would hit people for, in his mind, there was a reason. But nobody else knew that reason except Dad. You know, I mean, I still have a memory of coming home one day. I was about 15. Came home from school, walked in the front gate. Hadn't done anything, hadn't even been home. Walked in the front gate. He started beating the crap out of me. To this day, nobody knows why. Something just flipped in his switch. No, my dad was English. It was my mom that was German. So, I don't know what flipped in my dad, but something flipped in him, and he became a very dangerous person to be around, actually. But I don't hold the same grudge that other family members do. And I think that's because I took the time to research what happened to him during the war. And because I also suffer from the same afflictions and found out that they run in his family. So, to the best of my knowledge, though, he never counterfeited any money or anything like that. He did own a metal detector, though. So I got that addiction I got from my dad. So thanks, Pop. Still having fun with it. I'm gonna think I'm gonna run now. I need to take some more medicine for my jaw, and then I'm gonna decide what I'm gonna do. There's DA sales just in time for me to sail out the door, but got in time for an interview. I mean, an entry tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. On the Lodo coin collecting show, all of these people whose names have been going into this huge list of entries will have an opportunity to win some prizes. We unfortunately did not make the goal of 800 subscribers, so we did not get that second silver round in there, but we have a silver round, a couple of other coins. I've got some Nocta Macro metal detecting hats and patches. I have a very nice Centec 1,000 gram digital scale will be given away. And depending upon what arrives in tomorrow's mail, there may be something else as well, because someone told me they had sent a package with some goodies in it. So if they arrive on time, we will have some other stuff to go in. And I have, from today's visit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 more entries. There will be some wheat pennies for sure. There are absolutely going to be some wheat pennies involved. And I'm not sure what else yet. I was waiting to see if this package arrives, because if it arrives, that would change the whole complexion of the giveaway. Now, what I am going to tell you, and I posted the instruction video up there, so people that are coming in tomorrow, they did not follow the instructions unless they have come in over the last week and gotten on the list. They did not follow the instructions, so they will not be getting an entry for showing up tomorrow night for the Lodo show. If they want to show up tomorrow morning for It Was the News, they have an opportunity, one more chance to get signed in. But once that show is over, when that 5 o'clock show starts, there are no more entries being added. So only those of you who have gotten on the list thus far, and several people have more than one entry, because the rule specifically said if you show up or if you win your way in through playing cats and dogs, then yeah, well, there is more than one prize, James. There is more than one prize. It's not all gonna go to the same person. And I do just happen to have a second scale. So there will be 2 chances on the scale. The other one, the Centec, which is a very small one, was donated by Archaeology Mikey. I also have another one from a company called GAWw. It's a WG220 rechargeable pocket scale. It's really cool. Comes in its own little metal case. It has the rechargeable battery with USB cable. The cover for it can be used as a tray. It has the calibration weight with it so that you can Make sure that you are properly calibrated. This is the scale that I actually use. I'm not giving every one of the prizes to one person, but there is one large prize package and then some other smaller things. But those who did not get signed up will not have the option of winning the grand prize. And the reason I did that is because I want the grand prize to go to someone who has supported my channel consistently throughout the last couple of weeks, especially when I have been so sick. So the people that have not shown up, they might win a smaller prize, like they might win a, you know, I'm just looking in a box here. They might win a BU 62 penny, or they might win a Wheatie, or, you know, but they're not going to win the big prize because they didn't show up to follow the channel and support me. And so that's just, it's kind of a learning experience, you know. If don't expect something for nothing, you know. All I asked was that people show up, and those of you who did, some of you showed up every day. I mean, there are people like Charles who have 7 or 8 entries. There are people like Scratch and Go Crazy, 5 or 6 entries. Lucky James Eller, he's got a pile of them. Werner's got several. Larry Powell has multiple entries. Miss Southern Belle, Del Brett, Cynthia Swearingen, Archaeology Mikey, and others. I'm just, you know, taking a quick glance at my list. Some of those people have 5, 6, 7, 8 entries because they consistently show up every day and participate in the show. And so the other part of this is the grand prize. You guys that are on the list for the grand prize, I would appreciate it if you were in the show, but you don't have to be there to win. The other prizes that are being given away during the stream, those are going to require that you be there. But my regular show on Monday night starts at 5 Eastern and runs until about 7. I'm not going to start giving away the prizes until at least 6 o'clock. Because I do have the regular part of the show to do with the car wash quarters and the other coin related stuff. And so I have the morning, I do this morning show because I have a routine that I need to do in the morning, which is I have to get up, I have to make my vitamin concoction. I have a row of pills I have to take, and then I can have my coffee. So once I have done my vitamins and my pills and my coffee is ready, I sit down and I do this show for an hour, hour and a half, and get myself awake and let my medicine start to work, and then I go about my day. And I thought, why am I sitting here watching nothing? Oh yeah, we're still working on those quarter books. As a matter of fact, there's one that is only missing 2 quarters. And if I finish it during the low-dose show on Monday, no, it's missing 3. If I find those 3, I'll be giving this book away during that stream. So That's one of the reasons I said I got to go to the car wash, because I got to go get some quarters. But the reason I started doing the morning show is it helps me keep that regimen of getting my meds done and all of that. And I just find the history part of the coin stuff interesting. And I was not seeing that on the other morning shows. I was seeing talking about pouring silver and silver rounds, and I just wasn't seeing what I personally was interested in. So I figured, okay, I got to sit here for 2 hours anyway. I might as well do something, and maybe somebody will learn something else that they don't know about collecting and detecting. And sometimes we just go off on crazy history things like we did today about the 182nd Americal Division throwing cans of beans at the Japanese. I mean, you never know what's going to happen on my morning show. And that's fine. But I do try to at least put some educational thing in there. And that's why my little mascot is Susie Smart. I've told this story several times, and many of you know it, but there may be some people in here that don't understand who Susie Smart was or what she was. Back in the 1950s, they did not make educational toys for girls. Little girls were supposed to have things like Betsy Wetsy, little dolls that you could change their diapers and feed them. And you were supposed to have like Susie Homemaker oven, so you could bake cookies and that kind of stuff. Susie Smart was a whole different kind of toy. Susie Smart was a talking doll that came out before Chatty Cathy. And Susie Smart came with a desk and a blackboard and a couple of little books. And if you look at my picture, you'll see some writing across the desk, and that's the alphabet. Susie Smart, when you pulled the string, she would recite the ABCs. She would do 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8. This was a toy designed to educate little girls. And my parents were polar opposite on this. My mother was a very strong believer in education. I could read by the time I was 3. I mean, a whole book. I don't mean just words. I could read the whole book. I spoke in full sentences when I was less than a year old. My dad thought this was horrible. Now, this toy was the one toy I wanted more than anything. I wanted to be Susie Smart. Well, of course, Dad wasn't allowing no Susie Smart dolls coming in, so I never did get the toy. But I want to remind people that way back in those days when they didn't want to educate girls, one company, and it was called the Reading Company, put this toy out called Susie Smart. So that's why Susie Smart is my mascot on the morning show, because my morning show is educational in nature, and I'm going to educate everybody that there was one company out there that actually thought girls deserved a proper education. And I gotta get Scratch and Go Crazy down on the list. Showed up just in time. Tail end Charlie. So anyway, I've been on here almost 2 hours, and I planned on being here like 45 minutes. So I appreciate all of you being here. And Anyway, that's the story of Susie Smart, and I I just identified with that toy, and I never did get that toy. And yet, when I was at the hospital the other day, my sister and I looked the toy up online just to see how much it would cost if I wanted to get a Susie Smart now, because at the time it cost $2.99. Well, I found one complete on eBay that had the box and had the desk, and the speaker still worked, and everything was there, and it was $229. So it does not look like Susie Smart is going to be moving in here anytime soon. But we keep her in spirit in the show every morning. So thank you to the Reading Company for instilling my quest for knowledge. I'm going to take off now. I appreciate everybody coming in. Yeah, educational. There you go, Scratch. She was educational. I may do a whole show just on Susie Smart, but I haven't been able to find a whole lot of info about her. They didn't even sell this toy in toy stores. That's how unpopular the idea was. They did not even sell this doll. You could only buy this doll at certain grocery stores. They really did not want to promote the idea of educating young girls. And what's really funny about the doll is I'm going to take another picture of the doll and post it one day and put my childhood picture next to it. I even look like this freaking doll. So anyway, I'm going to go. I'm not sure if I'm going to detect or if I'm just going to go out and sit in the fresh air for a while, but the weather looks nice, and so I think I'm going to go breathe something besides anesthesia. I might be back on later tonight. I still have to finish the rest of that horrible nickel box that was almost all uncirculated 2020s. And I still have a few roll of pennies. I need to get this all rolled up and back to the bank tomorrow. So I may be back on later. I don't know. If I am, it would probably be around 6 Eastern. Just keep an eye out for me. Make sure you've got your notifications set that I'm coming on, and I usually try to put a thing up saying, you know, what time I'm going to be there. But anyway, all of you have a great day. Be safe. Be nice to people. Please be nice to people. I can't stress that enough. You don't know what is going on in that other person's shoes. So just be nice to them, and then you don't have to worry about them stepping on you. I'll see y'all later. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm glad some of you enjoyed my crazy stories, and we'll see you soon. Love you guys. Bye.